So a common idea or like a way people try and parse out what's going on in these states is this idea of a like a filter or some sort of perceptional filter when you're under any sort of psychedelic really, but more of the 5-HT2A or tryptamines. But when you look at that model, is that useful, or do you think it hinders progress? Like, where do you currently stand on that idea of this idea of a filter?
I think it's useful. I mean, the idea of a filter really can be traced, really should be credited to Aldous Huxley. I mean, he described this idea that psychedelics open the doors of perception, his most famous phrase, right? And he described this idea that you have this, so he called it a reducing valve, that effectively filters out all but a measly trickle of information that's important and useful to survival. It's broadly valid, I think, but Aldous Huxley was working in a time where we didn't understand the neural mechanisms. We now kind of understand how that filter works and how it doesn't work. It's one thing to say, oh, the brain is a filter, but then you have to say, well, how does this filtering work, and why would psychedelics disrupt this filter? We kind of understand how they do now, because we know that the the world that your brain is constructing is this model, and this model is constantly attempting to predict and filter out, to extinguish sensory inputs. Sensory stimulation is constantly entering the brain, and the role of this model, what the brain does, is basically try to predict what these sensory inputs are going to be. And if the model is correct, the predictions are correct, then it extinguishes, it cancels out. There's literally neural information coming down this cortical hierarchy towards the visual cortex, and it's literally cancelling out the information that's coming into the brain. If it gets it right, if it misses, makes a wrong prediction, then that information goes into the brain and must be processed. It's unpredicted. It's a prediction error. So the brain is constantly trying to make these predictions about sensory inputs, and that's how the filter works. It's like a process, if you can imagine, trying to work out where's this information coming from, and then cancelling it out, because that's cheaper to do that rather than to kind of process all sensory inputs, even sensory inputs that you already kind of know about. If your model is working, then you don't kind of need to know